Welcome back to the She Thrives Influential Women podcast. I am your host, Lori Murphy, and I am an empowerment coach for women, public speaker, as well as a published co-author, as well as or award-winning published co-author. And I am so happy to have you all here today. And if you're new to the podcast, please hit that subscribe button. Please leave a review. Don't forget to download. Your downloads, your support continues to grow this podcast so that it continues to get listened to worldwide for women that, are looking for influence, that are looking to grow in their personal development, that are looking to thrive and, really unlock their fullest potential. That's the sole mission of this podcast. And not only do I love to come on here and share my story, share my experience and tips and tricks, but I love to bring other women on to share their positive influence, their stories, their journeys to really inspire and motivate women across the world. So thank you so much. Please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share it with your friends. And a little bit about me is that I am sober from alcohol. I have been in recovery for 13 years, and my journey in recovery is really what helped me dive into this amazing journey of healing, personal growth and development, finding self-love and self-worth, climbing from out of darkness into light, and hearing my calling to be able to work with women to be able to experience the same things and wherever they are in their journeys. Today, I have an amazing guest, Linda Brand. She is an empowered coach. She also is the host of the podcast, as well as a woman who loves to, help others with their podcast. She's a coach. She also helps connect people for, guest appearances on other podcasts. She is a certified dream builder coach and women empowered coach with a passion for guiding passionate people toward living the most expansive, abundant, and joyful lives. Using her intuitive gifts and a wealth of experience, Linda supports her clients in unlocking their true potential. And without further ado, Linda, how are you today?
Oh, I'm well. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. It's like we're both looking in the mirror at each other because we're both doing similar work with the empowerment. So
Yes,
I love the name of your podcast and I love the work you're doing in the world. It's so important. And
absolutely.
congratulations on your 13 years sober.
Thank you.
It's incredible.
Thank you. And, I could very much, it's kind of like I can just bounce right off what you said and echo back to you, with the Empowered the podcast. I love that name. I've listened to your podcast. It's awesome. Like you're truly, you know, the the definition of what women need in this world, right? Like you're very strong, knowledgeable. So it is an honor to have you here.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate it.
So, Linda, where are you from? Tell us a little bit about where you're from and how you got into this work.
Sure, I'd love to. So I'm originally from Michigan. I grew up there my entire life. And in 2020, I started hiring coaches in 2017. And in 2021, I was at an event in Miami for coaches. I was in real estate, but most of the people there were coaches. And it was a transformative 3-day workshop. And at the time, I was struggling in my business. I was in a lot of debt, and my son was about to graduate college in 2 weeks. And I basically, the final night of this 3-day event, I had this divine message that I belonged in Florida. And it was really strong. And I was like, I'm tired of the cold, and my son's graduating. And anyway, I came back to the table. I was literally washing my hands in this Italian restaurant, and I got this strong divine message saying, you belong here, you belong here. Came back to the table, told the two friends. They're like, oh my God, you're moving to Florida? And I was like, I don't know. How is this going to work? Because back then, 2.5 years ago, I wasn't who I am today because I grow all the time like you, being in this line of work. But ultimately, I started out, I had love and food and shelter. And I had some positive things in my childhood, but most of it was lack, scarcity, fear, ego. judgment, critical. I didn't have a lot of supervision, and I got in a lot of trouble when I was a teenager. And I ended up in jail, and I was on drugs and all kinds of things. So that was the beginning of my journey. And I ended up, just a lot of things happened, and I met my son's father in the 90s. We weren't a match. I had a beautiful child together. So I was a single mother. In 11 and 12, I got very sick, was misdiagnosed multiple times, um, battled, Lyme disease for almost 4 years. And I was in a self-development workshop in 2016. And I got this aha moment where, I was crying and the guy's like, "Oh, you identify yourself with this illness." And I was like, "Whoa, aha moment." Went back to the MD alternative doctor. So I'm condensing everything here, but ultimately, I had a lot of challenges and trauma as a young person. I fell into the real estate career. I've been growing and healing and evolving ever since. And, since I started investing in myself and everything. But that sickness in 11 and 12 was the beginning of my awakening. I didn't realize it,
Mhm.
but it was forcing me to take care of myself. And, that was the underlying blessing, but it was really, really difficult. And yeah, so that's a little bit about what happened. So I ended up selling my home on 2/22/22, relocating to Florida with my rescue dog and starting the coaching, starting the podcast. And it's been a journey. And I've
Mhm.
just like literally quantum leaped when I left Michigan, and the growth has just been exponential. And I love studying the spiritual coaching and the self-development. It's my passion, and
Mhm.
the podcast has been really fun. And I am coaching people on podcasts and connecting people for podcasts because it's like a natural gift to connect. I'm a connector. But my passion work is helping women understand they're worthy, and that, helping people um thrive like you, and do go after their dreams, because we're not
Right.
here very long and we get to enjoy our time here. I think God wants his children happy, and we have programs and conditioning that teach us otherwise. And
Yeah.
so it's a lot of unlearning and, yeah, rewiring, reprogramming the subconscious with,
Right.
beliefs like that we get to, have what we want and do what we want and enjoy our lives. And yeah, so that's kind of a little bit of it.
Yeah. So one of the things, and just dialing back a little bit, was you mentioned how you struggled with, drugs and kind of kind of went through sounds like a very similar, experience at a young age as I did. Now, how old were you when that part of your life started, and what was that like?
Oh, that's a great question. I was 12 when we moved to a new city, and I did not fit in. I was shy to begin with, and I didn't have the designer clothes or anything. So I ended up getting in with the burnouts, and it just went downhill from there. So you are who you associate with.
Hmm.
And when I was 12, so the whole teenage years, I was the youngest of three, and my mother was always busy with things. My dad worked a ton. We lived with my grandmother, my mother's mother, who's from Russia. And basically, I just kind of was lost in the shuffle as the youngest, and I didn't have supervision. I didn't have guidance. And while other girls were doing wonderful things like, extracurricular, I was out running around with, loser boyfriends and different things. And anyway, I ended up, yes, on drugs. But by 17, I was arrested and facing a lot of time in jail. And it scarred me for my entire life. And I carried shame for many, many, many years. I didn't
Hmm.
realize until I started on this journey, like in this last 2.5 years, how I was affected and how I never really processed a lot of the trauma that I experienced.
Hmm.
Never had a therapist. And so a lot of self-awareness has taken place and a lot of healing the last 2, 3 years. And It's powerful because
Hmm.
you understand why you have what you have, why your life is how it is. Because, when you're not set up with a foundation to thrive and you're set
Hmm.
up to fail, really. I mean, I didn't have religion, I didn't have, and I just, I could have, things could have turned out much worse. So I'm very blessed and grateful to be alive and
Sure.
all that. Yeah. But yeah, and then so I was clean and everything was by 18, 19. But when I showed up to the court after 10 months of pending and the attorney telling us that I was going to have probation, I showed up and was handed a sentence that I had to serve jail time.
Oh,
I was like made an example of as a teenager from the suburbs.
yeah.
So I was in school, I was working part-time, all the things, and it was devastating.
Yeah. And, some of the stories that you're telling sounds like you're telling part of my story. Now, when I was about 12 years old, that was about when my parents' marriage started to fall apart. And, you know, the events that occurred for quite a few years in, my household with in relation to that was just there was some things that was traumatic, and parents divorcing is traumatic enough for a young person because when you're at a young age you don't really understand. You just see it as your family's falling apart, and now that you're only going to see dad on the weekends, and et cetera, et cetera. And I remember that was the, starting point to me for me. That was like that turning point for me was that pain that I was carrying led me to start hanging out. A lot of the people that I was using, drugs and alcohol with, they were going through very similar situations. Like you said, we are who we hang out with, and you kind of gravitate to the people that are in the same place as you. So
Hmm.
they're in, having dealing with bad family, parents divorcing, bad, sad, hard, situations. My legal issues didn't come until I was 29. And,
Mm.
I was facing, you know, they wanted to just give me like 90 days in jail because it was a DWI. I never hurt anybody. I didn't have an accident, but the DA did not want to give me any breaks, even though it was a first time offense. And that was my turning point to sobriety, was that realization that I had become everything I said I never would, you know?
Yeah.
And it's
Well,
like, I'm
it's
like,
a
listen,
blessing in disguise, right?
oh,
Because look who you are today and how you're empowering so many people. And,
yeah,
what a beautiful journey. I saw some of your before and after pictures and like you just transformed. And that was
yeah.
a gift. So, you know what I mean? It's at the time it was devastating and
Hmm.
it turned into a gift. And for me,
And the same for you.
yeah. Yeah, thank you. I just realized though that I carried so much shame. I didn't have the tools. I didn't know
Hmm.
what I know today. And then so that kind of affected a lot of things and I became numb. I remember years ago in Michigan just getting at the acupuncturist, her saying, "Your heart's closed, your heart's closed." I'm like, "What is she talking about? My heart's closed." I'm like, "What?" And then
Yeah.
now I understand my heart was closed. I was just numb,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
surviving versus thriving. I was taught to survive my
Yep.
whole life.
Yeah. I was in therapy when I got sober. I went to a 12-step program and I did like Reiki practices, and which was very healing, and it helped release a lot of that because I also, not just for the drinking and driving and getting arrested where I felt shame around that. I felt shame around everything that I had done leading up to that point. The people that I hurt, there was a lot of guilt.
Guilt and
And
lowest
yeah,
vibration. Yeah.
even to this day, when I openly share, because it took me up until very recently, probably within this past year, to actually share on a public forum exactly what I did. And, because so many people have lost loved ones to people like me. I'm
Not,
grateful that I did.
not today, not people like you today, who
Well,
you
people,
were.
right, who the person that I used to be, the person
Right.
that didn't consider for a second what might happen because I was so intoxicated. To be honest with you, I was blacked out. I would always have a plan. There were times where I'd give people my keys to make sure I'm like, I'm going to drive. Don't let me. And then sure enough, somehow I convinced them that I was fine and still got behind the wheel,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I'm like, because I remember someone saying to me, what's scary is that even when you're drunk, you don't know that you are because you don't change. And I'm
Mm.
like, mm, you
Right. But
know,
you were numbing your pain or
oh
you
yeah.
were trying to achieve some kind of feeling. It's,
Hmm.
yeah. Yeah, I'm not a fan of alcohol. I'm actually sober as well by choice. It's not an alcohol. Yeah, I ultimately, I don't drink. I was supposed to meet a friend today, and I told her because she's wanted to meet for happy hour, and I said, "Well, I don't drink. I drink Pellegrino," but she just canceled actually she's not feeling well. But yeah, I don't even typically hang out in those spaces just because it's lower vibration, and I don't enjoy it. I go to the
Right.
gym, I go to the dog park, I go to Starbucks, and that's my life. So, but
Amen. Yeah. Those
uh,
see to me that sounds great.
I know, right? Yeah,
Like,
I know.
you know,
I know, because we have one body, and the older you get, it's not serving the body at all. Like what, it feels good for an hour, maybe, and then you feel horrible. So I
yeah.
just not a fan, and with my health condition, I quit at that time for 2.5 years, and then this time around, it's like 3+ years probably. I had one glass of wine on a date like a year and a half ago, and it wasn't even good.
Yeah.
And so I don't engage in it. And it's hard because, it's a very much a social thing and
Yeah.
can be, you know.
So your journey, obviously led you down to doing the work that you do. So when did you decide to make the transition? Like, tell me the story about the transition from real estate into coaching. And
Oh, sure. Well, I was really burned out in the business. I was struggling, like I said, in 2021, and it was the fall, November and December. And I was at that event in Miami and everyone was a coach. And I was looking around going, she's a coach, she's a coach. I'm already helping all my friends for free because I've been studying this stuff. And even back in doing the real estate for 20, 30
you're
years, I
right.
knew I had a negative program. I knew I was like, because of the upbringing in this critical negative, everybody's out to get you home. So I was always listening to Brian Tracy and Tony Robbins for 20 years in the car, just trying to fix the thinking because you can't do sales and be negative. People
Right.
don't want to work with you, right? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so while I was at that event in Miami, I hired a coach right there, Dr. Michelle Barr, and
Mm-hmm.
I hired her to help me build the coaching. And I ended up really just having her as a support as I was relocating and changing my whole life from a house to an apartment, from one state to another, and just the whole thing. I was very nervous and afraid, but yeah. And so that was it. I was so excited. And then the podcast started in the fall. I took a class and I didn't even seek that out or have a plan to do a podcast. Like if you told me 3 years ago, hey, you're going to be living in Florida and have a podcast, I'd be like, what? I would
Yeah.
not believe it. But I was in a workshop and I was on the fence. Do I do it? Do I not? And it just felt better to do it. So I did. And it's been a really fabulous, incredible journey, meeting amazing souls I never would have met.
Right.
So beautiful. Yeah. And
Yeah.
serving and supporting others, I love it. Like you share an episode and someone tells you, oh my gosh, that was so good, or that inspired me, or something. And it's like, so it just, fills you up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I kind of knew since like 2019 that was a goal. Only because so I started, and I've shared this before on my podcast. I had a Facebook page that I used to go live on, and it was called Real Talk with Lori Dowling. That's my maiden name. And I would go live and I would talk, like inspirational talks. I started bringing a couple guests on. And when I started school to study my health and what my holistic health and wellness certification, it got to be too much trying to juggle that, a job, plan a wedding. So I ended up kind of stepping down from it. But there was this thing inside. That was where I heard that my calling to be a coach was doing that work. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is what I'm made for. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I always thought about making it a podcast, but it was one of those things that got put on the back burner. And this year, I was actually talking to one of my mentors. She was also on this podcast before, Margaret Reinhold, and she was like, start the podcast. Just
Yeah.
do it. And I'm like, went on Spotify and I started a podcast. I recorded 2 episodes and ended up basically redesigning it into what it is now and got it up on all the platforms. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where it was like I kind of got led into it.
Yeah. I love that. Like you followed that intuitive nudge. I mean, she just told you and you trusted it and you went for it.
Yeah. And at
That's
first I wasn't sure if I was going to bring guests on or not, but I'm really glad I did because I'm meeting women like you and building these relationships by having this podcast.
exactly. I have met such incredible women and people, and it's just been so beautiful and I love it. I love
Yeah.
it.
It's
Yeah,
fun.
it is fun.
It's
And
so much fun.
yeah, started doing some local networking here and finding some local women that are actually coaches or doing on the similar path, which was one I was meeting today, but she had to cancel. But and I was like, it was so amazing because it's always virtual, like all these people live all over because it's just me and the dog. I don't hang out with people just to hang out. I'd rather be home with the dog or just go, because I don't allow negative lower vibrations around. I protect my energy and maybe it sounds bad, but I don't really care. I do what feels good for me and I enjoy. And, like I remember this guy I was talking to, I met at a dog park and he's like, you need to get out and I'm going here and this and that. And I'm like, your fun and my fun are two different things. I could have fun sitting on the couch with my book, my dog, my candles, and take my bath. And like, that's my fun evening. I don't need
Right.
to be out or music. I love music, but
But I think that
you
that's empowering because I feel like sometimes, like, this is just my own experience anyway, keeping myself busy like that, always being around people, always being around noise was more or less my way of trying to drain out what was in here. And when I finally got to a place where I could sit in silence and just be quiet, like a good time to me is sitting up on my deck up at our camp during the summer with with a cup of coffee, a blanket on my lap, and just listening to the birds chirp. Like that's a good time for me.
An amazing time. Yeah. And the older we get, it's like, I mean, I know you're younger than me, but it's like peace and quiet is so beautiful. I
Oh,
love it.
I need my peace and quiet. I get overstimulated if I don't have it, and it usually comes out in frustration. And you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like you need that sometimes you just need it. And I like to be able to connect with my inner thoughts now and connect with my inner self,
Absolutely. And
you
notice
know?
what you're noticing and that's interesting. And we're not our thoughts. We are not our bodies. We are not we are energetic spiritual beings
Sure.
having an experience. I know you agree on that. And
Hmm.
so that's what it is. It's about not identifying yourself with these negative thoughts or beliefs and just shifting because we get to decide when we get to wake up every day and decide how the day is going to be and what you're going to think about. We can choose our thoughts like we choose our clothing every
Hmm.
single day.
Right. A
Yes.
100%.
Become your own best friend. That's what I
Yep.
want to tell you
Yeah.
because you wouldn't talk to your best friend the way that a lot of us talk to ourselves.
I think I was saying that someone recently, like I heard someone say something negative about themselves, and it's like, I'm like, don't talk about yourself that way. You wouldn't talk about your best friend that way, like, and we
Yeah.
kind of just like. she was an older woman and she just said something kind of not nice about herself at all. And I
Mm,
was like, that's
yeah.
not true, and it hurts my heart when I hear people speak like that. But I also used to be someone that would be like, ugh, I'm so fat. Ugh, no one loves me. Ugh, you know what I mean? Like I'm never gonna no one's ever gonna love me. No one's ever gonna like me. And then it goes into that people pleasing. So it's like to make sure people like me, I'm gonna do what they want of me. And I got
Yeah.
so lost in that.
Yeah, that gets old quickly, but I was the same way. I would, and I sometimes will notice it even today, where, I mean, not so recent, but like I remember like meeting someone and I'm like rushing because I don't want to be late. Like, what is wrong with being late? Like, but that is a pet peeve of mine. I don't like late people that are late. But and I love to be on time, but that's just another people pleasing kind of thing, noticing. And there's something else you said. So I substitute taught this week on Monday for the first time ever. And I had applied months and months ago, and they finally called me. And of course, they had to do the fingerprints and all the things. But anyway, these girls, it was fifth grade, and I said, because we're on this similar subject around talking about ourselves, and I said something about name two things you like about yourself. And one right out of their mouth, the one said, "That's hard." And the other one said, "Nothing." And I was like, oh my gosh, talk about sad, right?
Mhm.
So, and then earlier I said something about like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they were like, I want to be an actress, but if that doesn't work, I want to be a photographer. And if that doesn't work, I want to be a, whatever, whatever. And it kept going. And it was like, if that doesn't work, if that doesn't work, if that doesn't work. And I was like, oh my goodness, like
Mhm.
plan B, plan B, plan B, right? And like
Mhm.
sometimes we learn that like when you have a plan B, it's like you're, setting yourself up that you're not gonna succeed or something. But
Right.
anyway, I understand it's conditioning from their families and logical, practical, right? But
Mhm.
kind of bothered me when I heard both of those things because I wasn't like saying, what do you love about yourself? But I was just like, when these 11-year-old girls were saying that's hard, but then when we started to talk about their friends, oh well, I like her because she's nice and she's always there for me. And I was like, and then I got them talking about like, well, you could like your eyes and you could like your hair. And, oh, well, I like my eyes. And it just was like started. But yeah, I mean, self-love is something I teach and
Mhm.
I've been working on. And I know that a lot of us were taught from a young age to serve others and give to others and not to, it's egotistical and it's, arrogant or something to care for yourself and love yourself, even in the religious communities, this is what they're teaching. But the reality is, you are a better wife, you're a better employee, you're a better employer when your cup is full, right? You know this, you teach
Yes.
this. And we can give from the overflow. And that's the thing. When mom is rested and feels good, she's happier, she's kinder, right? So
Mhm.
this is basic information, but I love teaching this. And so when I hear these 11-year-old girls talking negative or about themselves, it's heartbreaking because it's already happened. The conditioning and the programming has already happened.
Yeah. I think that that's important to teach, the self-love component, because I feel like if now I don't know how many people out there have really ever experienced this, but I felt like when I was young, and I can't necessarily remember where I heard it or how I was taught it, but I know it was either from kids at school but basically, if you say you love yourself, you're conceited, you're full of yourself. You know what I mean? If you say that one of the things I love about myself is my personality. When I was young, it was like instilled in me, well, you're conceited, you're full of yourself,
Oh,
you like yourself too much. And it almost was like a horrible thing
right.
to say loving things about yourself. So it was almost like it was kind of shameful. And I remember being young, and if someone were to ask me that question, I wouldn't know how to answer it. Because one, I didn't see myself in a way where I could love my personality because I thought I was weird and awkward and people didn't really like that. Um, but I wouldn't have been able to give you that answer because another part of me would have just been afraid, fearful
Yeah,
of having that thrown in my face as being
yeah,
bad.
that makes sense. Yeah, I know. Um,
I didn't know it was okay to love yourself.
right, either did I. I mean, nobody did. And I mean, we were taught to compare each other and to judge each other and judge ourselves and I thought I was a body. I mean, I didn't know about the spiritual stuff. I was not really taught religious stuff. And, I just kind of lived in this weird, I was always intuitive though, actually. I kind of knew things, but one thing you said about being different and unique is like that's our superpower now. Now we realize like if you want to be like super successful, like why do they say the Ferrari has two seats and the bus has like whatever 20? It's like, the most unique people, what's his name that created Tesla? Elon Musk. Like these people are unique. Like when you have to embrace your uniqueness.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a superpower. Being
I
vulnerable is a superpower too.
Yeah, because God gave us these specific gifts to utilize for, this is my belief is, to be able to fulfill what he put us on this earth for, right? So like for example, I was made to coach people and help people and be of service, to empower women, um when a woman feels stuck and she doesn't know how to move forward with her goals because she feels shame, she feels fear, she feels guilt, or whatever the case may be, it's almost like God put me through situations that were hell, and I went through a dark phase so that I could figure out how to get out of that to help others,
Absolutely.
you know, um, because we're
Both
not supposed to suffer. We're not, suffering
options.
suffering is necessary. They say suffering is necessary, but pain is optional.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we get to create our realities and we get to choose our thoughts. So if you are in pain and
I
suffering, you're
Yeah,
choosing it. I mean,
yeah,
yes, we experience as a humans different things and we have to feel our feelings, but we don't have to stay there.
right. And I got that completely backwards. I was pain is necessary, suffering is optional.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, wow, I screwed that one up.
Well, at least you corrected it. That's okay. Right. No, you're right. 100%.
But
And
we do have that choice. We don't have to stay in it.
yeah, and I just feel like the older we get, less is more. Less friends, better friends, quality friends, less everything, less things. Like we realize we don't need hardly anything because we have all that we need right within, right?
That's how I feel.
I know,
I feel like I have everything that I need in my life to be able to survive. I have a roof over my head, a warm bed to sleep in, food in my belly, and I have the means to provide for myself. Not a lot of people can say that.
right. And you
So
have a
it's,
loving husband, you're
Mhm.
blessed, right? So you're
Yeah.
lucky.
Yeah, I don't have to deal with the dating world. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
But
No, I
I do have a loving husband who, you know what I mean? It took a long time to get there.
yeah. Did you guys meet in the recovery space?
So we met when we were probably like 14 or 15. We grew up in the same town, and we were really good friends. He dated everybody else, but I was the friend, He always saw me as, he was kind of a, and he tells this, he's very open about this, and he used to like to, date around, and he was kind of a player, And but he saw me as just too nice and too sweet that he just couldn't corrupt me or
Hmm.
whatever. And
Okay.
and he's like, I couldn't hurt her, so I just got friend zoned like that. And I was fine with that because I I didn't want to go there, you know what I mean? But there was an attraction, but we
Nice.
never you there, you
Nice.
know? And then we got older and went our own separate ways. He went away to college. I, stayed local, but I got started working. I got into a long-term relationship. He was doing his thing in his 20s. And eventually we both went down the same path with, you know, alcoholism. His got a little bit more intense than I did. And needless to say, we did reconnect. Well, we were friends on Facebook. And there was one point when I was sober and he wasn't, he reached out for help. And I did run into him, at a gathering with people, mutual friends. And then eventually we started seeing each other more in that recovery world and reconnected, started spending time together right at the beginning of 2020, right before the world shut down, and we just started hanging out as friends, and it just we just let God take the wheel, and it just led to, you
Oh, that's
know, we stopped fighting it and just surrendered to the fact that we really truly believed we were meant to be together, that God
oh,
brought us together at a point in our lives where we were ready to be good and right for each other.
nice. That's amazing. And what does he do?
He actually is a coach himself. So he works for a local company called Conifer Park. They have an inpatient rehab facility and multiple outpatient off-campus facilities. He works at one of the off-campus outpatient facilities, and he's called a SERPA, so he is a certified recovery peer advocate, and he's working toward moving up into a more advanced role. But
Nice.
he works with other, addicts, alcoholics, helping them try to get on their feet and get into a recovery program.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
very, very kind, and he does so much for his clients. He goes above and beyond for them because he's passionate about helping others.
That's beautiful. You're
Yeah.
both. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's not always easy. We have our moments, you know what I mean?
That's a-
We clash when we're tired. So
right.
we know when to go to bed.
Yeah. Well, it's work, right? Relationships are work, and you have to put the effort, right? Like
Yeah.
do your date nights and stuff and
Yeah. Yeah.
talk.
We tend to use we usually when we go to our camp, we'll go out to dinner more and we'll do more stuff out. But during the winter when we're home, we kind of hunker down. Weekends, we don't really, I can't remember the last time we went out to dinner. Um, as a date, I think it might have been our wedding anniversary or my birthday. It was my birthday back in November. Otherwise, we try to just hunker in and um, you know, we book a vacation, so we'll be taking a cruise coming
Uh,
up in March, and
good for you. Yeah,
uh,
that's amazing.
yeah.
Uh,
So, Linda, so your podcast, where can they find your podcast so that they can take a listen?
they can find it everywhere. And I have a YouTube as well where the podcast, some of the videos go and the audios are there as well. Empowered the podcast. It is on Spotify and, Apple and everywhere.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yes,
And
awesome.
you can
And
find,
don't forget to subscribe, ladies.
yes,
So,
please
so
check it out. There's something for everybody. We're in 3 seasons. There's 150 plus episodes. There's some solos, a lot of inspirational, motivational, transformational stories, very similar to yours. A lot of women empowerment, coaches, authors, healers, but there's just, multiple things on there. Yeah, so I
yeah,
appreciate
I think
it
going to be on your podcast soon too.
very much. So yes, you are.
Yes. Yes. So that's gonna, so, we can carry this conversation on there. You know what I mean? Because I feel like you and I love connecting with women that I could carry on conversations with for hours and never get bored. And I feel, and that you are one of those people for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can talk for hours. Absolutely. Um,
So, but I feel like people don't want to listen to that for 3 hours. So,
we can wrap it up. Yeah. No, I appreciate you having me on your show, and I love the work that you're doing. I think it's so important and
I
powerful.
and the same goes for me for you. I think you what you're doing is spectacular. And if anybody wants to reach out and connect with you outside of the podcast, how can they find you?
LindaBrandCoach.com and Linda Brand Coach on Instagram.
Fantastic. And I will surely share all those links in the description. Thank you so much, Linda. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. And if there's any way I could be of guidance in your journey, or if you have, anything you'd like to reach out about, please contact me. My email is lm as in Michael c empowerment as at gmail.com. You can also find me on all social media platforms. You can find me on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn. I'll put all of those links in the comments as well. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, let go of fear and let your spirit shine.